Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to discuss your word. Father, lead us through your spirit and reveal to us what you want us to know for this point in time, for where we're located, and for the current spiritual state that we're in. I ask that you be with us, you guide us, you keep us, and you inform us and give us insight into your word and into the things to come. I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen.
Amen.
Right, so we are at Parashah 46, which is Ekev. That means because. Now there's another meaning to it, so it also means wages, if you just pronounce it slightly different. It also means circumvent, if you just change the vowel points. So there's basically three underlining themes within this Torah portion, within the context of the verse. It gives a bit more of an in-depth idea of what's happening. We're going to spend a lot of time in the New Testament today because of the topics that just link towards that. But just to recap from last week. So last week we looked at Yahweh's people being like sheep led by the shepherd. Also look at leadership and corrupt leadership and what good leaders should be doing. And we also looked at the two witnesses briefly. We didn't touch on the topic of Yahweh saying no, but that's just example, so it's not a major thing. It's just basically because Yahweh told Moses no when he asked to enter in. So moving forward into this week, it's basically a continuation of Moses' last words. So if you think about it, the words of a dying man, what will be on the heart of someone who knows he's on his way out? He will definitely have a specific message that he wanted to share with the people the closest to him. So that's what the core and heart of the book of Deuteronomy is actually about. It's the words of a dying man. If you think of that in the context of Yeshua, all his words was basically the words of a dying man, because he knew that he's going to die. It's only limited time. So what are the most important things that he needs to convey to his people before he dies? So Deuteronomy and Yeshua's ministry, what Moses did in this book and captured in this book, is basically parallel in nature. Now the audience, these are the version 2, second generation wilderness dwellers. So it's a new generation within the context of the household of Israel, and they knew nothing other than dwelling in the wilderness. They had no other connection, connotation, context. So the first generation had belonging back to Egypt. So I think these guys were a bit more motivated to get out of the wilderness because they knew nothing other than the wilderness. And according to the promises, I think that was giving that desire that will pull them into the promised land. And so it's a different audience. And Moses addressed the first lot when he gave the commandments the first time. And he's repeating the commandments but to a different audience. And people who are basically moving into the promise other than starting the journey with the first generation. And since last week, the same theme is that's basically a picture of the last generation. So that places us in the wilderness. We also know nothing else but dwelling in the wilderness. So our wilderness is the spiritual barren land that we find ourselves in, specifically just prior to the coming of Messiah. The worst part prior to that, since Yeshua ascended, was the Dark Ages. That was also a very barren time spiritually. But then there was a bit of upsweep, reformation, and revivals and all things. But it seemed to tone down, going down and bottom out again before the second coming. So I think things are getting worse before they get better. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not as if, Yeshua came and since then, it was just from glory to glory and everything's just wonderful and it just happened. No, there was a big reset, trying to destroy that message and
Kill the baby before it's
And that's also symbolic by the killing of the babies up to 2 years old after Yeshua left. So they tried to kill the babies in the Dark Ages and they overcome that, and now we're in the process of people just going Australia, getting used to Babylon and liking to live there. So that iterates the importance of this book, and that's, I think, why Yeshua quoted from this book, or mostly from this book than any other book, because it's so relevant to him as well. Alright, so Deuteronomy 7 verse 12 says, "And it shall be because you hear these right rulings, and you shall guard and do them, that Yahweh your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the kindness which he swore to your fathers." So basically this word Ekev is, and it shall be because you hear. That here is the Shema. But it's not the Shema in itself, it's the word. Let me just get the right word here, I'm just jumping forward. It's a future tense, Shema. Here's the moment. Tishama'un, which is a future tense, to hear and obey. So in that phrase, he's basically talking to someone in the future in that passage. So he's not only addressing the second generation, he's addressing someone in the future, future tense. So that in itself is very prophetic in itself. That's a prophetic statement just there.
So is that the part where it says, when you hear the words and obey, and then you will basically be successful?
Yeah, because you do this. This is Ekev, because. And Deuteronomy 28, the same. If you do this, then you'll get the blessing. So it's the same connotation. So a lot of Christians trip up with this idea of, oh, you are blessed because you do something, because we just need to be, because you are, because you're the son of the king,
because you
have inheritance. It's a status, it's a state. But that's contrary to the pattern that we find in the word here. So it's definitely a consequence of. It's a because you listen, then you will be blessed and with his kindness. And it says that Yahweh your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant. But if you just take the words for what it is, it can also mean that Yahweh will guard you with the covenant. So the covenant is like a protection. So if you listen and obey, you will be protected because of the covenant. And you will be blessed and receive his kindness because you obey. And that's for that future generation that he addressed, not at that point in time, but I believe it's for the last generation that he's addressing in that instance. So the consequence of obeying is protection and blessings. And Deuteronomy 28 basically harmonizes the same idea and thoughts, where we are taught in the Christian faith, specifically the faith movement. If you believe, you receive. Receiving is connected to blessing, and blessing is connected to obedience. It's not only by knowing the truth, it's about being faithful in the truth you received, and that doing of that truth is what activates the blessing in your life. So the concept of faith is totally misplaced and misunderstood and mistaught by modern day teachers. And they use basically I think it's New Age thing, positive thinking and those kind of things, which is more to do with white witchery and all sorts of things, where you proclaim things in a positive way, so you get some energy out there, and then energy or the universe will then provide you this. The secret is a very good example of that. In this week, there's two of my colleagues. They rambled on about religious people. I don't know why they did that, but anyway. And the one said, "Oh, I'm spiritual." And I want to say, "Oh, I'm also spiritual." And I want to ask them, "So what does spiritual mean?" And then they continue talking. "Oh, I know there's something out there. There's something, greater than us." But they didn't quantify it as a person. They think it might be a force, it might be a realm, it might be something. And I think that's based on the secret and all those things
Yeah.
that they refer to this
The universe.
higher
The universe. Yeah.
entity called the universe or the space out there, which is not in a sense true, but it's
Satan,
lower than Yahweh.
Satan uses truth.
Yeah, they rub Yahweh out and they use everything He created and refer to that as something else, and then they worship those things
Yeah.
without Him, acknowledging Him. Yeah, so that's the problem with being spiritual is you worship the things of Yahweh.
Not Yahweh.
And to recognize the spiritual forces at play, but you don't see the one behind them. Now the other interesting idea of this verse is, and it shall be because, Ekev, you shall listen to the, and then there's an Aleph Taf there. Now the Aleph Taf is connected to Revelation, where Yeshua revealed Himself, I'm the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega, the Aleph and the Taf. So the Aleph Taf, if you put that in the context, and it shall be because you listen to Yeshua, the Messiah, who's the living Word. So that gives us that future connotation, because when He proclaimed or prophetically uttered this verse, it was for a future listening and obeying prior to the first coming of Messiah. So after the coming of Messiah, this verse will come true, because He's referring to the one that will come, and then you listen to Him. And that's what the Father said. This is my Son, listen to Him, obey Him, because He's the living Word. Now I'm just going to make the connotation with the Aleph Taf and just take it back to Genesis so we can understand what the idea of the Aleph Taf is, because the connotation made to the Aleph Taf in Revelation is actually a connotation made in the book of Genesis that's also referencing the Messiah, which is in the first verse of Genesis, which is
You might want to repeat that phrase just.
Sorry.
the Aleph Taf. So the Hebrew read, and it shall be because you listen to the Aleph Taf. There's the Aleph Taf there. And because Ekev, that listen is a future tense listen, it refers to listening to the Aleph Taf, because the Aleph Taf has not yet come. So He's speaking to people after the first coming of Messiah, and from that point forward. That's where this Deuteronomy 7:12 is prophetically speaking to, that future Shema tense listening. And to understand the Aleph Taf, we know it's in Revelation, where Yeshua said, I'm Aleph Taf, but it's also in Genesis, in the first verse, where it says, Bereshit bara Elohim hashamayim ve'et ha'eretz. And in the middle there's a Aleph Taf that's silent, it's not translated in the English. So there's 7 words in the first verse, and you can put them on a menorah pattern, because there's 7. So if you put them on a menorah pattern, always the one that's number 4 is the most important one, because that's the branch that upholds everything. That's also the idea of Yeshua being the branch. He's not only the branch of the olive tree, He's the branch of the menorah. That's why He is Shavuot and He is Pentecost. He is that, He is essence of that. And in creation, He was the pillar and the foundation of everything in the physical. So if you look on the right of the Aleph Taf, you get 3 words. Bereshit bara Elohim, and those 3 words exist in the spiritual. Bereshit is something in the beginning, so everything originated from Bereshit. That's where the Father is, so that's spiritual. Bara is Bar, Son, with the Aleph connected to it, so it's the Father and the Son, also spiritual. And then Elohim, of course, is also spiritual. And then you'll get the Aleph Taf, and everything on the left is what is created through the Aleph Taf. So that is Shamayim, which is the heavens, which is basically, just want to play on words, just want to write it down so you can see the same idea. You get a Shin, and you get the Mayim. So you can see we get the word Ta, Miyim, which is Taf, Mayim. We get Shamayim, which is Shin, Mayim. And Mayim means water. And if you think about the heavens, Shamayim, verse 2, or the second day, He separated the waters from the waters above from the waters below. And that's what the Mayim is. And the shin represents fire. And fire's got the function of adding energy to water to translate from one medium to another, the same essence. So water can be a solid, it can be liquid, and it can be a gas. So if you practically look at science, adding this shin, which represents Yahweh's spirit and his energy, to the waters, because the spirit moved over the waters. That's a picture of the fire on the water. That's why the seventh plague, hail and fire. Also in Revelation, you get hail and fire, water and fire. Yet again, we see water and fire. And that's the energy that separates water. And the waters above and the waters below, water is actually what sustains life. And I believe water also has a spiritual aspect to it. People do studies on water and they can't really understand all the benefits or the mysteries within water. It's a spiritual thing. Yeah. And it gives life, and it's got memory. It stores memory. So it contains all the history of all the world, of all the people, across all generations, is stored within the water on this earth. If you can dissect that and read that, you can probably, like the Torah, contain all the history of everything that's ever been and ever will be is written within Torah. In the same way, it's in the water. So in essence, the Torah and water's got the same attribute in its function of storing information and containing information. It's like DNA strands that contain information. Mayim is like that DNA strand that exists within the spiritual water, the Shamayim, where all the angels and all the living beings and all them exist. And then you get the strand of DNA of the Mayim, of all physical things, all plants, animals, life, everything has got Mayim in it. So I think that's the essence of what DNA is all about, is that Mayim.
Water represents the spirit of God, basically, in everything.
Yeah,
Right?
life.
Life in everything.
He refers to it as living water. And the life that's given to the water is that shin, that spirit, the shin, symbolism of that.
Hashemayim is heavens.
Yeah.
So, and it talks about separating the waters. Right, so we've got the dome over the waters.
Yeah.
And then at the flood, the windows of heaven open. So are there still waters up there?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at, I don't know if you've ever seen people who actually do videos of the stars. Have you seen it?
They're not stationary, they're moving.
Yeah. And
They look like mechanical things that
look
move
like
and
they're on a
rotate.
different
It's not just a
medium
static light.
because they-
It looks like you're looking at them through.
I haven't. No, I've seen like what do you call it? Star trail photography, where where it looks like there's circles
Yeah.
like that, where they filmed it at long exposure and you can see the rings of the stars turning like that. But I haven't seen a
Yeah, this
star.
looked like,
Yeah.
you know, the
Looks like
movie
it-
Transformers? It looked like a mechanical thing that's
It's
constantly
It's
moving
almost
into
like
one
if
shape.
you're
No, I
at
haven't
the bottom
seen
of
that.
the
Yeah.
ocean looking up and somebody's
That's what the stars
are on.
on the surface.
Can you get
It's
that
somewhere on
Speed,
YouTube.
why
I need
we
to
can
find it
see
again.
Twinkle
Yes.
is what we
Yeah,
call
that twinkle
I
that
have
you
seen-
see is the
Yeah.
transforming
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I have seen
whatever the mechanism is that the star consists
images
of.
where you can see that that's not a solid.
No,
No,
it's,
it's not
it's
a
not like what we've been taught. This thing sitting there. No, it's a.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So if that holds memory, then that makes it a witness.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
witness.
So
Heaven.
And they are.
And yeah.
Yeah.
so-
Witness.
so- but you sort of think it's just almost poetic.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
it's
but that's actual.
it's actually
Yeah.
true. They say that when you're born, you're always attracted to that place because of the water. Because your body is attracted, because you consist of 70% water.
Right.
And your water connects to the water that you're born. Birthplace.
Yeah.
Birthplace.
Yeah. That's a
Well,
water
we
stone.
part
What if your water detracted from your birthplace? When I went back
Exactly.
to America, I was ready to get back over here after 2 days of
Yeah.
being there.
Same.
It all depends on what's
Yeah.
in the memory of that water,
Yes,
whether
that's
whether you're attracted or not.
That might be why and also why you long for,
But we do have the water of our ancestors, which are basically connected to Israel. That's why people get a longing for
For
Israel.
Israel.
It's
Yeah.
because of that in your
Yeah.
DNA, through all the mixing of all the nations,
Yeah,
the scattered tribes.
yeah.
We've got some of that in us, in all of us.
Yeah.
You know,
That's-
some have more than others within different tribes.
fascinating,
So your attraction is, you'll know which tribe you're from because of the water that you contain, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's-
I think, see,
It's-
our
Perfect
kids
Yeah.
paid for us to have our DNA done.
Mm.
And my DNA is 80 to 90% Celtic.
Mm.
And then there's a sort of smattering of other things. And then, but Sarah's has got, you've got a bit of Jewish, have you? You've got
Well, I
some.
came across Spain and Eastern Europe and a
Yeah.
few things there. I mean, I haven't gone into it much.
But No, so I thought as
Didn't
well,
get into the DNA test.
I've got no Jewish DNA, but then,
You have to.
well, researching the Celt, there's some thought that the Celt originated from Israel, they were a Jew initially, because they began in the Black Sea area and then
Probably
moved across.
Issachar. Probably Issachar.
Yeah, they moved across the whole of
Yeah, if they use
to
ships
Europe.
and all that and the trading,
yeah.
that's Issachar.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting to know.
That will be
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah, Britain is derived from the word Brit Am. It means people of the covenant. They were original Israel,
Oh,
Britain.
is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Brit Am, people of the covenant.
Oh, Brit. Yeah, of course.
Uh,
So you did. Sorry to have to go a little different way, but you did. I'm just making a connection. You did the DNA thing, but I did a family tree for my mum's
From my mother's
maternal
side.
side, and we discovered that their ancestors go back to Danish. And there's a long, I went back to 1600s, and it's Denmark,
Yeah.
Copenhagen, and there was a little bit of moving around Europe for a while. I was very suspicious of why they moved here and there, like generations, but it was all like Danish. But that didn't come up in your DNA. It
No,
said,
well, only to say
said Eastern
past.
Europe.
That's why I wasn't that.
You weren't that
impressed with
convinced by if it was
because they're
actually
selling
true.
things
Yeah.
after the thing. They,
Mm.
they,
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at your family crest, there might be symbolism there that's
Mm.
similar to the 12 tribes,
Mm.
banners.
Mm.
So,
What's his name? You don't like the guy. I don't want to say guy.
De Mont, Joseph De Mont.
Joseph Dumont. If you.
He's got a good
are
teaching
you
on
familiar
that.
with Joseph Dumont.
On the 12 tribes. And,
He's got very good information about the 12 tribes
Right.
and where you
and
possibly
they banners now
fit
linking.
in as well. If you look at your family crest, maybe one symbol or whatever.
Mm.
So Joseph Dumont.
Dumont.
Yeah,
He's
Joseph Dumont.
Canadian.
Yeah, very good information.
He's friends with my sister. So.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Mm.
No, they met in Israel.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Philip's sister is also a Dora teacher.
Oh, okay. Is she in South Africa?
She's
No,
in
she's in
Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we kickstarted at the same time basically with Monty Judah's Torah portion. That's what we started.
Yeah.
And she gave me this Torah portion to listen to. She said friends of her gave it to her, and it looks like a bit sus if I don't mind listening to it and just give my opinion.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop listening.
Wow.
Yeah, so little Monty.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
just going through his revelation now.
Yeah, no, he's
That's
really,
good, yeah.
really good. I love him. All right, so going back to the symbolism of the Aleph Tav. Now, the Aleph Tav not only means the beginning and the end. It also represents the Aleph Bet. Because the first letter is the Aleph, the last one is the Tav. There's 22 letters, there's 22 almond blossoms on the menorah. So it all makes perfect sense and all harmonized with the symbolism. So it represents the medium through which he created, which is the medium of the Aleph Tav, which is the Aleph Bet, which is the Hebrew language. And it's also the person whom he created through. And that's also reflected in John, that he's the Word in the beginning, and he created everything through him. So that is basically based on Genesis 1 verse 1. And the Aleph Tav that's in that position with what is created. So everything, another interesting thing about the water and the light and the stars, I just want to mention that. I did some research, but this is more scientific based. And basically this guy had water, and through frequency he could generate light within water through frequency. Yeah. So I believe that's a technology how stars are created within a body of water, and then light shining through that medium. So it's not burning in a vacuum, it's burning in Mayim.
And
Because
waters,
Shamayim, the essence of Shamayim, the heavens, is water.
Yes.
The Hebrew tells us so, it's not a
Yeah.
vacuum.
Yeah, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
It's not nothing. And you get the shin,
Yeah.
which is represent a little fire of the star, in the Mayim, and that's what the stars are. And the word for star and angel is the same.
Yeah.
So when it says a star fall from heaven, which is the wormwood, it's an angel that's falling. And that angel can be symbolically or physically look like a star or manifest as that. We don't know, but yeah, there's some connotations there. So that's interesting as well. So connecting the two together, the first verse in Genesis was Deuteronomy 7 verse 12. So if you listen, because you listen, Ekev, and you listen in the future to the Aleph Taf, it also means that the Aleph Taf has got a creative force or function within this verse as well. So the listening to the word that's revealed through the Aleph Bet, which are all the words or the commandments, through the person who is the living word, is also a work of creation. So when he spoke to whatever he spoke to, and it formed things, he can speak to people and create within people things that he speaks into them. So the same creative power is within words, and that's what makes the commandments so powerful. People think commandments are just something about, no, commandments are the DNA of reconstructing or recreating his creation in you. So if you partake or take in his commandments or interact with his commandments, that recreation power is working within you and he's recreating you. Because creation has fallen, so creative power will then be recreation or restoration. And that's basically what the work of Messiah is. And that's also symbolically sitting upon the 7 branches of the menorah. And it's got exactly the same power. So if you overlay the menorah pattern of the festivals with the menorah pattern of creation, you can see that Shavuot, the receiving of his spirit, is exactly what the Aleph Taf is. So the spirit that they received was the spirit of the Mashiach. It's his spirit. And there's actually an interesting quote. I'm doing this preparation for Hebrews chapter 2. And one of the passages that they quote, I'm just going to read it to you so you can just hear it for yourself. Some people might take me out on this, but I don't care. It's not important. It's a quote from the Zohar. Listen to this. The Spirit of God, which hovered over the waters, is the Spirit of Mashiach. And from the time of the creation, he washed his garments in celestial wine. So by that he's quoting Revelation 13 and 19, talking about the wine, which is the blood. So his garments dipped in blood, that's in there. And he's also talking about the spirit that moved over the waters. It's the spirit of creation, which is the spirit of Messiah, which is exactly what we're talking about. And that's a quote from the Zohar, and that's one of the things that the writer of Hebrews is drawing from to make a statement about him being the creator and also the one who died. And those two connections. Because within chapter 2 it deals with him dying, it also deals with him being the creator, which is the Aleph and the Taf. The creator is the beginning, the dying is the end, and he's both. So that's why it's the spirit who hovered over the waters, and he's also the one whose garment is dipped in blood. Those two symbols is in that quote.
So can I just ask Philip, you're saying where it appears in the Torah, those Hebrew words in the Aleph Tav is a silent word in the middle that they don't
Not in
pronounce.
Hebrew, in English. It's
In
not
English.
translated in English. There's nothing. It's
So, but it does appear in the Torah
Yeah,
scroll,
yeah,
and
it's-
it's there.
there's
and
7
what
words.
Do they pronounce it?
Yeah,
And what does it?
it means et.
It says it. Okay.
It means
Oh,
and. It's a connection word.
Okay.
Like the English will say and. It's something that connects. And that's also a function of Mashiach. He connects us. He makes us echat with the Father. He connects us.
Yeah.
So that essence of what that word means. And ve'et is just Aleph Taf with the Vav in front of it. So that's also symbolic of the Aleph Taf being human. which is the Aleph Tav that exists in the physical. So that's another symbol of him.
So many things, I think.
Yeah.
What's this? A word?
Yeah,
And.
Yeah, so
and then in this one that we're doing this week, in that sentence that you
It's
opened up,
there. Yeah.
in English, what is translated?
Oh, it's nothing. It's not
It's
there.
not translated.
It's not translated. No, it's hidden,
Wow.
just like in that one. No, so that just gives you another level
Hidden
of
until the
depth on the symbolism of the Hebrew language, and then connecting two ideas together, and then see how Yahweh is at work. And it all is the truth. We just see it reflected in his language yet again. So that just shows that his language is supernaturally constructed, and it's coming from a being that is super intelligent. That's all I can say. We can't even comprehend his intelligence. And I think if you reveal the fullness of him, it will be like staring in a very, very bright light. You won't be able to see anything. It will just blind you. In the same way, your mind will just go blank.
Yeah, that's why
Overload.
we will only see him as he is when we are transformed.
You need to be transformed. Your little processor needs to be upgraded
Yeah.
to comprehend
Yeah.
him. When you see him, we can't comprehend him. We comprehend him through symbolism, through creation, through nature. Everything that's in the physical are shadows of the real, and it's toned down. I guess probably 10% of the essence of what the real is. But we can only understand 10%. Our minds is only capable of understanding that little bit. Just like you try and teach a baby, maths, advanced maths. They won't know. They need to mama, dada, and all that first. It will take time. So we need to be brought up. And I think that's the other function of the commandments. It's like a baby that needs to learn how to listen, to talk, then to read, then to study, then to understand. And then they get a field of expertise, and then they become building their career, whatever they want to do, which take years. In the same way, interacting for years.
They fall over,
Yeah.
they scrape their knees, and
So the Torah is basically our school book, and we need to learn to listen, learn to understand, to read spiritually.
I think it's interesting that you said that it's living, that water, that when you interact with it, it has a transforming effect by doing it. That we're just saying today that I don't know how many times I've read Revelation since since I first became Christian 30 years ago. Couldn't understand a word of it.
No.
But
all of a sudden you do.
But starting to really study the Tanakh and observe Torah, and then suddenly it's like, the lights come on.
Yeah.
You can't understand it unless you
Yeah.
have read it for a start, because it's all about what's already written
Yeah.
there.
And you have to understand the Torah first before you can understand Revelation.
Yeah.
You can't just jump into Revelation
No.
and drown and
Because
don't know
I
what
used
to
to
do.
think, why?
And that's why
Make
people don't want
mistakes.
to, and
Yeah.
they don't want to.
So you think, why did the Messiah write it in such a mystery, complicated way? And then now it's
Because his language is
because,
complex
yes, and also he's
and mysterious.
this
he's
generation.
speaking to believers of his word.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
The ones that have already studied.
Yeah. So studying is basically preparing yourself in order to understand. So that word Shema is to listen and obey. It's not just listening, it's obeying as well. A lot of people only listen. They don't obey. So understanding actually comes through doing. Now we're going to look at the two types of reprimanding. You get fatherly discipline and motherly discipline. We're going to look at those two. There's two verses. One is in Proverbs, one is in Job. And the two's got different functions. The one deals with wisdom and understanding. The other one deals with perfection. And in the same way, the one that has to do with understanding and listening is more just listening. When you start doing it, then you get the wisdom. It's a deeper level. And then you can apply the wisdom to other things as well. Where you just learn, that's a cup, you can drink coffee. The wisdom is don't overheat it, you can burn yourself. Don't drop it on your foot. There's some other aspects to it that's outside of its function, that's connected to wisdom. In the same way, Yahweh's discipline are basically the barriers just push us inside to enrich our understanding. It's not there to hurt us, it's there to teach us. And sometimes it's painful to hear that I'm wrong or to experience that I'm wrong because there might be some physical consequence attached to that. But just like a clip around the ears, sometimes required for you to not go astray, so the Father will do that lovingly to us as well. All right, so that was a very interesting thing. And this is summed up in John 1 verse 1 to 4. Now listen to the language now when you hear John in connection to what we just learned. In the beginning, Parashah. You start the same. Was the Word, which is the Aleph Taf. And the Word, which is the Aleph Taf, was with Elohim. So you can see there's Elohim and there's the Aleph Taf. They're next to each other. And the Word, Yeshua, was Elohim. And the same was in the beginning with Elohim. So that means that in the beginning it was with him. So he's connecting the Aleph Taf to the far right word, which is in the beginning. Now when I did the study on the Aleph Bet, I think it was on the letter Bet, I did a whole study on the word Bereshit. And Bereshit is basically a space. The letter Bet is a space to create within. And the Aleph sits silently behind it. We think the first letter of the Bible is the Bet, but there's an Aleph that's hidden behind it. And connecting the Aleph with the Bet is Av. That's Father. That means the originator or the origin. And that's where we're going to. He said, I'm the way that leads to the Father, which is the Bereshit and the hidden Aleph behind the Bet. And the Bet is the house. And he's the Father of the house. And everything comes from him. Even the house comes from
my
him.
Father's house.
Yeah. And that Bet is the space where everything was created and it flowed from that Bet. Every single word of the Torah flowed from that Bet, that first word. And he is still creating today because his word is still flowing in his Torah. As we discuss it, he's speaking through that house, that Bereshit from the Father, to originate from him, through the Aleph Taf, to us now. So that first verse is always actively relevant to us. It's not something that happened in the past. And then he continues, the same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, which is bara. Without him, not anything was made that was made. So he's basically referring to the two on the left. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The next verse, or the one associated with this is, let there be light, which is the next part of the creation. And light, just for interesting sake, Yahweh is light. Light means truth. But light, if you look at it scientifically, the photon is the smallest building block of any matter. A photon. So anything that's got mass, if you take it down to its smallest level, it's a photon. So everything is light, actually. Consists of light. So when he said, let there be light, it's like having a ball of clay. Now I've got my medium. Now I'm going to play with it. And he used words to form the light. And the light became things. Because when he spoke, bara also means things. And create is the same word.
What does the word to speak mean? Oh, it spoke.
Bara.
Barak, yes.
And bara also means things. So what you say is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's one and the same thing.
That's why it's so important to guard our mouths.
And not to say the wrong things because you create the wrong things. You look in the secret, which they got from here, and they took out Yahweh out.
Yeah.
But it is a truth that comes from his word. Yeah.
Or you can go through our room again.
The next meaning we're going to look at is the word, the phrase that opens, and it shall be because you hear, is Parashah Ekev Tisha Ma'un. So Vaya means, and it shall be, and you shall do. Tisha Ma'un is a future tense that comes from the word Shema, that means to hear and to do, just in the future tense. And then Ekev means because, consequently, as a result of, and it implies that if I do something, there will be a result of my action. So that's what Ekev is. So cause and effect, that's Ekev. And it's a scientific thing as well. It's not only a spiritual word here. So every commandment, everything that Yahweh spoke or captured in His word is for us to hear and then to obey, and then there will be a consequence because of that. And even if you hear and you don't obey, there's still a consequence, which is the opposite of what you expected. So that word Ekev is a very powerful scientific concept actually. It's the cause and effect. So we shouldn't take that lightly. Matthew 20 verse 1 to 8 says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner." Now I just want to make the connotation to the parable of the vineyard, where Yeshua used the parable of the landowner planting a vineyard and having laborers, because the word Ekev also means to labor. So the cause and effect is an action that result in a consequence. In the context of labor, it means if I labor, I will get a wage or a reward. And that's what Deuteronomy 28 is all about. If you do these things, you'll be blessed in the city, blessed in the field, blessed going out. If you don't do it, you'll get the opposite. So he's talking about good laborers and bad laborers regarding doing his commandments. But he used that in the form of a parable to explain that to them in the same way. So Matthew 20 verse 1 to 8 is about explaining the Ekev, cause and effect in the labor
On the wages
idea.
of sin is death.
It's wages. No, which is the Ekev concept. So the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to go hire laborers for his vineyard. And then he go on to say, then later the day, got more laborers in, and then later again, he got more laborers in. And then the laborers got upset because the ones who came in last got paid the same wage. And that's symbolic of when you labor in the kingdom, the wage is always the same. Whether you work for 10 years, 5 years, or the one that hung next to Yeshua was only there for a couple of hours maybe, and he got the same wage. And it's all about the reward of entering into the household. Is the reward that we get through this. Now, the concept of the vineyard is the word kerem, which is kaf resh mem. Yet again, you see the symbolism of the mem, that's water. You get the symbolism of the resh, that means leader. And you get the symbolism of the kaf, that means hand, that's also actions. So you work under the leadership of someone, and you need water, because the word vineyard also means garden. And if you take that back to Genesis, there's the Garden of Eden. What did Adam and Chava do? They tilled the ground. They had to work in the garden. So they had to labor, they had to Ekev, to get the benefit of it, to get the reward. Because he is the master of the garden. And he had laborers. Adam and Chava were the first two laborers in his garden. Now the three aspects, as I described, the first one, the kaf, is basically you, or the servant. The resh is the master of the vineyard. And the mem is the medium that sustains life. So part of what you need to do to labor is in order to water the garden. So if you work in the garden, or if you work in the kingdom, it's always about watering something or giving his word out wherever you go, because that's what the gardener does in connotation to this Hebrew symbolism. Now kerem also has a gematria of 260 if you add up those three words, and it's got four words. That's very interesting. If you make the connotation, it's mind-blowing to see how a number connects to a word that support the meaning of the word, which number it is. The word that adds up as well as kerem, that means garden, is nir, nun yod resh, that means to break up, to plow, or to till.
Ah,
Isn't that interesting?
wow.
Then kelokale, that means worthless, because in the parable he spoke about the evil ones and the good ones. So there were worthless laborers and there were good laborers. And then kautza, that is kuf tzadik ayin, that means to strip off, to scrape, and to segregate. So that means to basically pull out weeds and clean up and all that. So it's all actions that you do in the garden. And then sar, which is samech resh, that means stubborn and rebellious. That again links to the evil laborers. So two of these words, rebellious and worthless, linked to the laborers. And the other two words, to plow and till, and to segregate and to strip off, is what they were supposed to do. And they didn't do it. And that's basically the connection to the word vineyard or garden. Very interesting. And 260 without the zero is 26, which equals Yod Vav, which is 26, Yahweh's number. So he's the master of the garden. Yeah. All symbolic, perfectly harmonizing with the holographic imagery of his super intelligent language, multi-layered, multi-dimensional, supernatural language. The akaf, the word akaf, adds up to 172, which is ein kuf bet, which are those two. And akaf means also to take by the heel and to follow at the heel. What connotation can you make about that when you hear that? The meaning of akaf. Yaakov, heel catcher.
Yes.
That's where his name comes from. It's from akaf.
It was pulled out by the heel.
And that's linked to Ekev, which has to do with cause and effect. It has to do with the actions and the consequences of it.
But might it also have a connection to the garden where the serpent...
There's Crouch's heel, that connects to the garden as well. That akaf, that heel. Crouch's head, he'll bite you on the heel.
Yeah, bite you in the heel.
Yeah. So that's where we get the Yaakov connection. And Yaakov was changed to Yisrael. Yisrael is a household. So now we see the letter bet, or the house, coming into play through Yaakov. So that's the bet of Parashah. It's Yaakov, household. The next one is Becca. Can you remember the word Becca? It's in one of the Torah portions. Becca. It's connected to wages. It's a half shekel. It's money. And that's a temple tax. So your contribution is half a shekel. So in order to give a full shekel, you have to get someone to come with you, so you can both give a shekel. So yet again, the connection or the unity between people in order to make a contribution. Because a shekel means to contribute. And when he counted the people, he didn't count the people, he counted their contributions. So if you brought nothing, you're not counted. And your contribution is what you do in the garden. Are you helping? Are you part of the laborers who do the right thing? To segregate, to clean up, to remove the rubbish from the good, the wheat from the chaff, and you till it? Or are you one that's like we saw with the other one, the rebellious and worthless, lazy ones?
And receive.
Believe and receive. That's rebellious and worthless. That's basically worthless. Just sitting down to gimme. It's about giving.
And I don't like what you're giving me, I'm going to go somewhere else to get.
Yeah, because I'm going to get something better there. So someone asked me, because I joined a normal church. I probably told you the story.
Yes, you did.
And I told the people, I joined the church not to receive, because I've got enough. I don't need anything else. I've got the word, I studied the word. I go there to give and give a contribution with whoever Yahweh sends on my path. I don't have to stand on the pew. I can just be there and talk to people. Whatever topic pops up, I am then able to give. And that's where your Becca comes in, your contribution. So if you go to a place just to receive, you need to change your mind about that. It's always about what can I do, what can I contribute.
Mm.
Otherwise, you become worthless in that sense. So that's the Beka. Ben Mi.
That's a big the homeschooling.
Is that what they got that
Must
word
be.
from?
Must be, yeah. Contribution.
Yeah, it's good.
So the Bekaa Valley
Yeah.
in Israel, the idea,
Most probably has a meaning
Has a
there.
meaning to
Mm.
connect it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Ben Ami. Means people, and then Ben Ami means son of my people.
Mm.
And then the other word that also adds up to 172 is Benyamini. That means Benjamite.
Mm.
And that also represents Benjamin. That means son of my right hand. So you see, son of my people, son of my right hand. So that connects to Yeshua.
Mm.
And then the contribution of the sanctuary. And the first one, Akaf, also means not only heel catcher and represent Yaakov, it also means footprint and footstep, which automatically connects to the concept called halakha, your walk. And your halakha is connected to a rabbi and his Talmudim, because the Talmudim walked in the halakha of their rabbi. So whatever the rabbi taught them, they walked in that halakha, and they watched him, whatever he did, how he expressed the Torah, they copied him. So the disciples of a rabbi basically reproduced the rabbi within the Talmudim. In the same way, when you're a disciple of Rabbi Yeshua, you walk in his footsteps, his halakha, and you do the Torah the way he wants it,
Yeah.
or the way he understood it, and the way he taught. So he's not the one who took away the Torah, he just had another halakha that's different to the halakha of the Pharisees and Sadducees. It's not to say that theirs is 100% out the window, it just means that they had more complexity and more, less clarity, and his was very simple and very clear. So we need to find the best
So
teacher.
whenever somebody, say, yeah, specifically, I'm thinking about the Wednesday evening people, and they say, yes, but Jesus came and he fulfilled the law. I like to say, but give me the meaning of the word fulfill.
Fulfilled, yes.
Fulfill means to give meaning to something, doesn't mean take away.
The Greek word for fulfill means to do 100% with the right heart's attitude till it is completely done. That's what fulfill means in Greek. So that gives another spin on fulfill.
well, that's very, very clear, isn't it?
Yeah. Doesn't mean
What
to
he did.
chuck it out,
No.
to throw it out. Yeah.
He's modelling what we need to do.
Yes.
With the right attitude until
Right.
it's 100% done. And he's done it 100%. So we walk in that halakha. Doesn't mean because he walked in it, I don't have to. Because
Does
then you
the
become
ultimate-
worthless.
Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have the right heart attitude as well. Alright, so it's all about walking the footsteps, about having the contribution, the shekel and all that, and working in the garden. So we saw a few things there that immediately will jump up. And some people say, oh, we saved by grace, not by works. So where does it all fall into? So in this parable that Yeshua gave, it basically mentioned both things that you need for salvation. The first one is you enter his employment because of grace. And then he allow you to till his ground so that you can have a reward. So opening the opportunity is where grace is. It's not in receiving the reward where grace is. It's allowing you access to the opportunity that is the grace that's extended to you. And if you take it to a normal, plain, understandable level that we have today that we can understand, this word Ekev also means to be employed by someone. And having the opportunity to work is grace. And then doing what is expected of you, you'll get a reward because of it. You don't get a reward because you're in the gate now and you just sit there being worthless. You need to actually do something that's stipulated in your contract. And if you want to relate that to a normal level regarding his word, your position description is the Torah in a spiritual way. That's how you do your work. Read the Torah and do it like that. And when you do that, there will be a kef consequences. Because you do that, the recreation process will happen in you as well as other people that you interact with, and you will get a reward accordingly. And that's also in the New Testament that he said, those who teach people not to do the commandments, they will be called least in the kingdom. Those who teach people to do the commandments, they will be called greatest in the kingdom. So that means that there are different levels of rewards in the kingdom because of this principle of Ekev. So it's not just like you just get in and you get a harp and off you go, sit in your cloud.
So is there grace, you're saying the grace, you know, when Paul talks about being grafted in, into the olive tree.
That's the opportunity.
So
Grace.
that's
That's
the opportunity,
grace.
isn't it? That's the grace, yeah.
Just like the Gentiles back in the day with Moses, when they wanted to join, they had to be circumcised in order to access the Torah. It's a privilege to access the Torah, and you had to be grafted into Israel in order to do that. So in the same way, you have to be grafted into the household through Yeshua in order to access the Torah. It's still the same pattern.
It's funny that you can receive the grace and be grafted in, but if you don't produce fruit, you still get cut off.
He prune you,
And
he
it
cut you
says
off,
that,
chuck you in the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all about not being worthless, not being rebellious in the garden. Yeah, you have to bear fruit. And James 2:14-17 says the same. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says that he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. So faith is absolutely worthless unless you Ekev, labor, have a consequence of your labor and bearing fruit. So
It's interesting that for a woman to bring forth a child is also called labour, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the same.
yeah, it's labor, it's work.
Yeah.
That's the same, bringing forth fruit. And the fruit of your body is the child. It's hard work, 9 months of labor. Ekev and the Yaakov connection. So this is where we make the next connection to that interesting verse I want to bring up. Is Ekev also means heel catcher, footprint and footstep. But it also, when you change the vowel points, it's the word akab, which is that one. So you just change the vowel points. So the bet can be a V sound or a B sound. So akab means to supplant. Yeah, and circumvent. So immediately we see another shadow of what something that is good can be made to become evil. So having akab means to circumvent. If the commandment says this, I'll try my best to find my way around it, not to do it. So that's circumventing around it. And that's where that verse comes in. They hide behind the tree and they eat the abominable thing. And they will receive the same reward similar to what the wicked's going to get. And that's to do with the labor or the reward for their fruit and what they're going to do. And get the connotation there to the garden and the tree and being in the garden. Yeah, so circumvent is got that negative connotation, and I know we all got first-hand experience of what that looks like, dealing with people who reject the Torah and argue about it, the way around it, around the commandments, and not wanting to do that. So that is basically Yaakov in his earlier stage. When Yahweh touched him on the hip, he changed his walk, his halakha changed, and his name changed. So in Hebrew, your name is your character and your destiny. So becoming Yisrael is becoming the righteous people of Elohim. So he actually become plural. He's no longer one person, he's now many. And that's where the nation was born from him, from that moment after he wrestled with Yahweh and Yahweh changed his halakha. So in the same way, we hand those people over to Yahweh so they can wrestle with that. He'll sort them out. He will change their walk, and then they will become Yisrael after that. So let them be. We just need to share the truth. If they reject it, we hand them over to Yahweh. Go wrestle with Yahweh about this. I'm already convinced. You don't have to convince me. Yeah. All right. It can also have a positive connotation because in the storyline, Jacob circumvented his brother Esau and got hold of the birthright, which was actually what Yahweh wanted. But because of his blind father, spiritually blind, couldn't see anything, Yahweh used his mother to intervene to get the right son in front of the blind father in order to transfer the birthright to the right son. And yet again we see that the transferring of hands, the same symbolism.
Yeah.
So Yahweh circumvented.
Yeah.
He used that same in
I
order
always
to get
wondered
well.
why Isaac, you know, was like that. You know, why he must have known of the promises. Well, just the loving Esau, and you know.
And he was waiting for his, you know,
his
go
Game.
hunting and bring the game. He's had a very
yeah,
craving for meat.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jacob was always serving in the house, and Esau was always hunting. So you get the man of the field, which is worldly, versus the man of the house, which is someone working in the household, which is to do with Israel. So you get worldly believers and spiritual believers, and that's the connotation there. And Yahweh will always circumvent and get his birthright onto the right one to carry forth his name and his covenant.
Happens all the way through.
Yeah. So if you're unwilling, you always find someone who will circumvent you and put it on someone else. So your anointing, your blessing, and his claims go for you. Your life will go on to someone else to carry that out, because his will be done with or without you. I think who sing that song, with or without you?
With or without you, yes. That's a wookie song. Is it you too?
Yeah, you too. At least they Catholic, a little bit Christian. So with or without you, Yahweh's will be done. Yeah.
Well, it's the story of Esther, isn't it?
Now the connotation with the Jacob and Esau, and also the circumvention and the consequence of that, because we're dealing with Ekev, because of that circumvention there was a consequence. So later on he had the kiss of Esau and Jacob's trouble and the wrestling and the changing of the name. And I've got, did you see, anyone of you know seen this picture of the Torah scroll where the teeth marks are above the word for the
No.
kiss? So that's the kiss of Esau. It's got teeth marks on top,
Oh,
little dots above the word kiss.
I've heard about it.
Yeah,
That he was biting him on the neck.
yeah. So that's the
Yeah.
teeth marks, and I think this comes from Monty Judas. Thing.
Oh yeah, that's where I heard it.
Yeah, Monty. That's why I heard it first.
And that's the jots.
Yeah, those are the jots and the tittles. That's how that's the jots, little dots.
And it actually means that.
Yeah, it means a bite.
Right.
Yeah, it's above the word kiss. So it's
So it's not really a kiss, it's
a bite in the
So
neck.
when they
So it's a false.
yeah.
It's a false embrace.
From the outside,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
family saw,
Everyone
oh, they're
watching.
kissing,
Everyone watching Esau's saying.
but those two knew what it was about.
Because you're reading and you wonder, well, why does Jacob just?
Yeah, he goes.
He escapes. He goes.
Yeah, no, he's terrified because his brother just gave him. And the symbolism,
Kiss of death.
Esau being a man of the field, a hunter, understood the way animals hunt. They bite in the neck and they destroy them.
I was going to say it's like a wolf. Or
So it's a symbolic thing that he did there.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's not the same word as used when Judas kissed Yeshua, is it?
It's probably the same symbolism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or was that an actual
It was a kiss of death, and this was
Yeah.
symbolic, a kiss of death.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same symbolism. Yeah.
It will be interesting to see if it's the same word though, most probably.
Yeah, if it's the same word.
Yeah.
written.
Now, kiss is the word nashak, that means to kiss armed and armed men.
Kiss.
Armed and armed men. So it's a military.
Military.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So even within Hebrew, it's got that connotation.
Ah.
The two opposites, meaning the same. And in connotation to that, if you look at the symbolism of Jacob and Esau in this context, Jacob became Israel and the birthright went to him and the Mashiach was born from his bloodline because of the birthright. And Mashiach was born from Judah, which was part of Israel. So moving it back, you can connect Judah to Yaakov in that connotation. So Esau, who does Esau represent in context of Ezekiel 37, the two sticks? So the one is Judah, the other one is Israel or Ephraim. That's on the other stick. So the two sticks will come together. So Esau in this picture are the Christians, Ephraim. And Yaakov represent the Jews, the two houses.
Hang on. Sorry. So you've got Judah. I always thought the one stick was Judah.
That is Judah.
And the other stick represented the northern.
Yeah, which is
tribes.
Israel or Ephraim. And the reason it's interchangeably Ephraim or Israel, because Ephraim was the largest tribe within Israel, the 10 tribes.
Yeah.
So they interchanged those two together.
So how does Esau come into that?
So the symbolism of Yaakov and Esau is Esau is the man of the field. The Christians come from the nations, people of the field, people of the world.
Right.
Where Yaakov is the people that comes from Israel, because Judah comes from Israel, and Yaakov represents Israel. So it's to do with the carrying the birthright.
Who does the people in the world, the Christians represent? East.
The people of the field, people of the world.
field.
That's where they come from.
But not saying that they have come from Esau's loins.
No,
symbolically.
No, this is symbolism.
A picture. Oh yeah.
It's a
okay,
picture
okay.
of the field, worldliness.
Yeah.
So Christians come from the nations, from
Right.
worldliness. They
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah.
And Jacob comes from, or Israel,
Judah.
represent Israel, and his birthright represented.
Yeah.
Eventually, Judah and the Messiah was born from him
Yeah.
because of the birthright. So you can make the connection between Yaakov and Judah, and Esau and Ephraim.
Okay.
So you overlay Ezekiel 36 or 37 with this story, with this symbolic there. And the reason I'm doing that, because it's been done in Isaiah 8. They talk about the two houses and the house of Jacob. So why will he refer to one of the two houses as the house of Jacob? It's the house of Judah. And the other one was Ephraim. So he made that connotation as well, overlaying the two. And he's got a prophecy for the two houses in connotation to this, in connotation to our time frame right now. So I'm going to read that verse to you. And because this Torah portion, the Shema is future tense after Mashiach, so everything in this Torah portion is for the last generation, prior to the coming of
Isn't it
Mashiach.
amazing that the Torah portion is now?
We were reading it this morning.
Alright, let me just find it. So this is Isaiah 8 verse 12 to 18. But before I read that, I just want to read verse 8 first, just to give you another context where it's placed in the prophetic timeline. He said, "He will pass through Judah, he will overflow and pass over. He will reach up the neck, and the stretch out of his wings will the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel." So he talks about the land of Emmanuel. Now Emmanuel is the term that was given as a name of Yeshua when it was prophesied or given to
You should call
Miriam.
him Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, God with us. So the concept God with us is the Mashiach. And he's talking here about your land, O Emmanuel. Now the land is the inheritance of Emmanuel. And that land is basically, it talks about how this land will be taken back and given to the descendants of Emmanuel, or the people of Emmanuel, God with us, which is the followers of Mashiach. Now verse 12 continues. I'm just going to read verse 11 as well. "For the Lord spoke thus with me, a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying." So we should not walk in the way of these people. And what does the people say? He says, "Do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy." Isn't it interesting?
It says
Oh my goodness.
Do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy.
Wow.
So don't call it a conspiracy, basically.
What they're calling a conspiracy.
Yeah. He said,
So
I
this
should
is
not walk in the
just-
way of this people saying,
What was that bit?
I shall not.
I shall not walk in the way of this people saying. A conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy. Right?
That's just a little bit of a hug for you, Harry.
So this is in a time frame after Emmanuel, after the first coming. And he's talking about people who call things a conspiracy.
Mm.
And it's about the land, the inheritance of Emmanuel. Now, the Emmanuel or Yeshua will only gain the inheritance of the land after crossing the Jordan. So the context is right at the border of crossing the Jordan, entering the promised land, which is the land of Emmanuel. And at that point in time, they cry out and say, that's a conspiracy, that's a conspiracy. He said, don't walk in the way of those people saying it's a conspiracy.
In the word.
Nor be afraid. Now listen to this. Nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. Yahweh of hosts, him you shall hallow, or hallow. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. He will be your sanctuary. But a stone of stumbling, listen to this now, here comes the two houses. A stone of stumbling and a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel. A trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and many among them shall stumble, and they shall fall and be broken, be snared and taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the law or seal the Torah among my disciples, and I will wait on Yahweh, who hides his face from the house of Jacob.
Jacob.
Oh.
That's Judah.
My goodness.
He hides his face from them. He didn't reveal himself to them that was the Messiah. And I will hope in him. Here am I and the children whom Yahweh has given me. We are all signs and wonders in Israel, from Yahweh of hosts who dwells in Mount Zion. Mount Zion is what Hebrews also used in Hebrews 12 as the end after the coming. So you use the term house, the two houses, then you refer to one as the house of Jacob or Yaakov, like we discussed here, and seal up the Torah among my disciples and bind up the testimony. Now the word to seal means to store it up as if it is a treasure. Not to close it, not to share it. And that's why I also said, don't throw your pearls in front of the swine. That's Torah. Don't throw your Torah in front of people who will trample upon it. Put it away as if it is a treasure, and those who want to partake of it, then you open it up and you show it to them, those who will appreciate it. If they don't appreciate it, don't share it. Yeah. Seal it
A
up.
little bit more comforting.
Yeah. So I think what it's saying here is, if people want to hammer and argue about it, don't make it a topic, because they trample upon his Torah, and we cause them to sin badly, because they upset Yahweh when they do that.
Okay, so you're putting a stumbling.
Yeah. And he's talking about the two houses that will stumble. Now the one house that will stumble is the house of Jacob or Judah. Their stumbling is the cornerstone, and that's also in 1 Peter. The rock of our salvation, who is Yeshua the Messiah. They're blinded, they can't see it. That's why it's a stumbling for them. The stumbling for the other house is that Yeshua is the Torah. So the two houses both stumble over the rock of our salvation. So, very interesting verse, isn't it?
Yeah, wow.
So it's Ezekiel 37. It's also, this passage is the kiss of Esau. It's a conflict between the two houses. It's an end time context, and it's relevant to us today, where people use the word conspiracy.
Yeah, and just, I mean, what happened on Wednesday when he said, take you by saying, well, it's not, it's a conspiracy, really. That's what he said. So when we read
Conspiracy.
that,
Yeah.
conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We label it a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
yeah.
and then we don't have to.
Yeah, we don't have to
Consider-
talk about
We don't have to
But
but
consider.
it's relevant for today.
And
Yeah.
the main issues with the conflict in that environment is the stumbling stone over Yeshua being the Torah.
Yes.
I know, that's
Yes.
exactly what, yeah.
It is, yeah.
And in the
So his advice to us
That's
is
why I don't know what
bind
to
up the
do,
testimony and
Hide it,
seal
hide it.
else
the
is
Torah
there?
among
Hide
my
it.
disciples.
Hide it, but if you hide it, what else is there?
Well, we will
Just
talk
love.
about it. Just say, well,
Very watered down.
this is what we heard today. We have to hide it
Yeah.
from them. They don't
No,
want
you-
to hear it.
You lock it away because it's precious.
They
It's
will
not
ask.
there for
As soon
people
as
to
they ask,
trample
then you
upon.
take it out and you give it. But as soon as they start arguing again, take it back, man. Take
Just
back
lock it
again.
up,
Yeah.
All right.
Mm.
Okay.
seal it up, because it's holy, it's Yahweh's. Don't allow them to defile it.
We're talking about the Torah.
Yeah.
Well, the things that we're having conflict about in all sorts of ways, you know, law
Is
and grace.
Torah.
I think the best is to wait for them to ask a question and then answer the question, but don't present a topic that's controversial. Wait till they ask and then you answer. Otherwise, just talk about the things that's
That are just
palatable for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we've done on
Unless they ask.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, we didn't raise.
Yes, I know.
I know.
We didn't raise it. Ron and Michelle raised it, and then Michelle raised. So Mish. Yeah.
He's like a naughty boy.
Yeah.
He gives and then he just sits back and sees
And
them
then watch
fight.
other people fighting his battle.
He gives a little bit more and then he just sits back again.
Yeah, I know.
But then, so Michelle raised, and then
I know.
Tony himself
Yeah.
introduced.
Mm.
Yeah, brought something up.
Yeah. So
That's really wise advice, though. Yeah, to think of it as a treasure
It's
to
a
seal
precious
up.
stone, it's a treasure.
Yeah.
Lock it up,
Not to
lock it
have
away.
trampled on.
Don't share it with people who don't
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Because my struggle, I've been thinking about this a lot lately and thinking, feeling like that, but not having that's
yeah.
the scriptural backup, but feeling like that and thinking, well then if there isn't that, what is there? Because, and then feeling like, well at the beginning we were just like they were, so I feel a bit like,
No, you're not allowed to.
letting them down, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah, you want
We've
to help
tried.
them.
yeah,
Yeah,
but-
otherwise you let them down
But
for
then-
telling
Yeah.
them the truth.
We went on a journey where we sought it out.
yeah, but they're
Not-
not coming, so
Hmm.
that we've
But
got
I know what the problem is. It's
Yeah.
because you're growing.
yes,
You're exploring and you're
Yeah.
growing and they're not.
and they don't want
So
to.
as a matter of fact, you're outgrowing them now.
Yeah. So what do we? That's I feel
Just
really,
wait because
Let it go its natural
they're
way.
coming back
Don't
Yeah.
push anything
Yeah.
if it resolves and they
Yeah.
come back.
yeah.
That's
they want
it.
to know.
Because actually
They
said
don't, just don't want
this
to
week that they may not
accept.
come back.
Well, that's fine.
They
Then.
said, and that's fine.
That's
They said,
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear
Then
you.
you just meet socially and
Yeah.
platonically. That's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
That's how we deal with our family members who's not on this
Yeah.
path. We
Yeah.
can't raise this because otherwise there's always a fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just don't say anything then.
Yeah. That's a
But
good,
just have a relationship.
good picture. Yeah.
Meet you on your level.
That's
That's
what
it.
I'm doing.
But
That's
initially-
what I'm doing.
Initially we said to Tony and Michelle and
Yeah.
Leanne that we would try and avoid
These
topics.
Yeah.
But
The thing is, it will come
it's
up.
not
It
possible.
does come up.
We're in,
It's hard.
we're
Yeah,
in
you
these
read it.
incredible times. We're
Yeah.
in these incredible
Yeah.
times, and it will come up. You can't avoid it.
But,
It's in your face.
Yeah,
yeah.
every
But I
single
think-
day.
I think what I'm hearing what you're saying, that if you stick to we discuss scripture, but let them speak.
Yeah.
Because if we speak, it's always going to come back to
Mm.
Torah.
It will.
Because
Yeah.
it just is.
True.
Let them speak and maybe make.
And you
some
bring out
points.
your pearls when you're among the people who appreciate
Yeah.
the pearls, and
Yeah.
you discuss that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's like that dream that I had about with getting on the train, but
Mm.
before that we had bunches of torches.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
But we were told, don't give them out to anyone.
That's
Only if
right.
people ask.
Ask.
Then you
Yes.
give.
Only if they ask, then you freely
Yeah.
give your torches out.
Yeah.
But if they don't want it, don't force it on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's right.
Yeah, they know clearly what we're.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, our friends in Brisbane is the same. They know exactly where we stand. And they sometimes will bring something up and ask our
We-
opinion.
we-
Otherwise, we say
Gold
nothing.
Coast, friends in Gold
Mm.
Coast.
Just say nothing.
We also made an open invitation to come on Saturday, so
Mm.
so that's it.
Yeah,
They can learn so
They
much.
said nothing.
it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, regarding the symbolism of the kiss of Esau, so it's Esau biting Yaakov. So it's the Christians biting our Jewish brothers.
Mm.
So that means that we can't be aggressive towards the Jews. That's
Mm.
basically what it means.
Mm.
Because Yahweh blinded their eyes so that we can come in.
Mm.
And they will wrestle with him and he will change their walk.
Yes.
I won't wrestle with them.
Mm.
I'm not going to change their walk.
Yeah.
It's his children. He'll deal with them. In the same way, our Christian brothers who want to bite us in the neck, they need to wrestle with Yahweh. I'm not going to wrestle with them.
Yeah, that's right.
It's, with all due respect,
That's-
his
yeah.
problem. It's his children.
Mm.
I can only do what I can do, and I need to deal with it wisely. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective when we meet. It's only going to be arguments and waste of time.
Yeah.
Might as well dust it off your feet and just carry on and talk to someone who want to hear.
Yeah.
Because the
And-
time is short. We can't sit here and
Yeah.
argue about
Yeah.
I think
trivial things.
it brings it back to what we discussed previously about the talents. Yahweh chose to give us talents,
Mm.
revelation.
Yeah.
We need to be obedient towards the talents that He gave us, to the revelation that He gave us.
Mm.
He didn't say that they have to, well, yes, they have to be obedient to the Torah, but they haven't received the revelation yet.
No.
Now, so the
So
symbolism
So
of
it's our job to be obedient
To
to what
the
he,
revelation
that
we have,
revelation. He will deal with them.
Yeah.
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 And
It's,
it's our job to pray for them, to lift them up and ask Yahweh to open up their hearts and their eyes to receive the revelation.
now, what's interesting about the talents, if you look at it in different passages and you just overlay that again, the one talent is the revelation of Yeshua as the Messiah. That's talent number one. Basic gospel message. 2 talents are the headings of the 10 commandments. Love God with all your heart, soul and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Just the 2 main things. And most Christians only receive 2 talents. Some of them only receive 1.
Yeah.
Now those who receive 5 talents, it's the 5 books. It's the Torah. They receive the Torah. So, and you will multiply because you've got the 5. And you are entrusted not to bash your brother that only got 2, to force him to have 5. They only got 2. Leave him. But use your 5 amongst the people who want more and multiply that. Don't waste your time on that. Unless they're asking me part of the journey, then of course, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's 5, the 5 books of the Torah, and is that 5 is the number of grace? Is that right?
That's also grace, yeah.
Yeah.
The Torah is grace.
Just,
And number 2 actually means relationships. So loving Yahweh is a relationship, loving man is a relationship. It's all about love. That's what they want to talk about. This is 2 talents. Let's talk about love. I love you, love you, we love you, we love you so much. That's all I have. Oh, righty then. Let's just talk about that.
That's true. That's what comes
that lady that's
Yeah, just relationships.
Yeah.
So your relationship with them should only be about relationships.
Right.
On a very meek spiritual level, because that's where they're at.
That's
They only
why-
receive 2
yeah.
talents.
And that's why this is such a godsend that you turn up, because then we get to get stretched and learn.
Yeah.
That we were looking for in that group, and it's not going to happen unless they have revelation. That
Yeah, if they want to come and ask, well, there is an appetite for end time things. So I think if the other people don't want to join, you just say that this group is going to talk about relevant things that's happening around us. See if we can find it in Scripture and talk about prophecy, specifically the end times.
Well, included in our.
I think that's what the theme of the Wednesday should be, because I know the other people are. It's got an appetite, and there's a lot of normal Christians got an appetite for end times as well. So I think that should be the basic premise for that Bible group, study group, is to look at current events, discuss it in relation to the Scripture, get answers to questions from Scripture regarding that, not about doctrines and commandments and Torah and all that. Just prophecy and type things. Because I think the other people have appetite for that. So I think that's a good place.
That's right.
And that's basically maybe 3 talents. That's an extra one. 2.5. Little bonus talent there. Although it's slowly opening the eyes for the 5 talents. So you're always working them, especially if people got a willingness to learn about end times. They're hungry for more, and then you can just bring them in with the rest as it goes. Right, the last topic I want to just touch on is discipline. Yahweh's discipline. Now there's 2 verses. One is in Proverbs that talk about as a father, the son whom, he reproves as a father the son whom he delights in. For whom Yahweh loves, he reproves. As a father the son whom he delights in. So it's a fatherly discipline. Now the verse just after that, verse 13, talk about wisdom and understanding. So the discipline is on the level of understanding and learning wisdom. And understanding is a consequence of wisdom. And wisdom is a consequence of truth. So you need truth, you need to apply the truth, and then you get wisdom. And as you apply them, now I understand. So
Do you want to show
that's
that
also
menorah?
on a 7-branch menorah.
Menorah, but
Isaiah
they actually light it in white.
2 verse 11 verse 2.
The way
The way the light
yes. You can receive and understanding. Is everything.
No.
What do you want to do? No, thanks.
You don't want to just pull it back.
Well, I'm a queen.
So in the middle we have Yahweh, and on the left we have, I forgot this verse, knowledge, fear, then strength, no, it's counsel.
Strength to follow his counsel.
Strength.
Follow his counsel.
The Isaiah 11:2.
And then it's wisdom
And understanding. Closest.
and understand. So
what-
basically the fatherly
I just want to
discipline.
say something.
Yeah.
When the children were little and we used to light a menorah on a Friday night, I would teach them to light it this way, exactly what Philip is going to show you now, because it just shows you the way we approach Yahweh. It's on a menorah. It's actually beautiful.
And of course he is the father.
Yes.
So the way the menorah is in the tabernacle, in the holy place, one of the objects that we engage with. The menorah also represents the spirit of Yahweh, and this is also in Isaiah 11 verse 2, referring to the 7 spirits of Yahweh, or the 7-fold spirit of Yahweh, however you want to do it. It's actually the 7 attributes of the work of the Spirit. Just like you get the work of Messiah, you get the work of the Spirit. And this is the work of the Spirit. The work of Messiah is the 7 festivals. The work of the Spirit is to take us through the journey, and we're moving from the outside in. So the middle branch is the most important one. That's Father Yahweh. That's where we want to get to. How we get to that is through the outer ring, and they are connected. Knowledge and fear. So knowledge is the gospel message, your first talent. And once you have that, you need to learn more about him in order to respect and to fear him, and to tremble at his word, and to take his word serious. So that's furthest away from him, but that's the first step. And then you get the second one,
Strength to follow
strength.
his counsel.
to follow his counsel. That's where you receive his spirit, and you get that inward strength and drive and new nature and all that. So that gives you the momentum to want to follow his counsel. So in your own strength, just coming out of the world, you don't have that unless you get that anointing of his spirit. It's right, yeah. That's the anointing. Let's call that the first talent, and that's the second. First and second talent, basically. And then the next level is wisdom and understanding. So that's where you actually apply truth and you gain wisdom as you walk in it, and then you understand. So you won't have understanding unless you do it practically. So you can't just hear. So this is also Shema.
Yeah, that's what that's called, isn't it?
I'm just going to write this down here.
Let's get some more.
Yeah,
So Shema, this is hear, and that's obey or do.
Is that the knowledge? That the
Oh, actually,
outside ones?
sorry, actually, here sits here, that here, and doing is here, obey. Hearing and obey is that last one. Hearing and doing are those two there. So you start off by hearing the message, the gospel message, learn about Yahweh, and as you do that, the truth, you start to gain wisdom, and then you start to understanding. So the best way to learn is through practice, and if you don't practice the word, you won't understand him. So just reading about the festivals will give you knowledge, but doing it will give you that depth. It's about reading about bungee jumping and doing bungee jumping. It's two different things. So in the same way, wisdom and understanding is a higher level of learning and grasping Yahweh's things, because you start to walk in his shoes, you start to interact with his word. His words start to interact with you, and you start to get that feeling. Now, anointing, I'm just going to put the number 90 there. Moses was 90 years old when he received the anointing. Probably on his birthday, his 90th birthday, he got the anointing. Now, Abraham, not Moses. Abraham's name was changed when he was 90 years old, if I made the right connection. And his name was changed by inserting a letter Hey. The letter Hey is also a letter that represents his spirit, which is more the breath, the ruach. And that's the same symbolism as Adam received when he received the spirit or the ruach that made him a neshama. Now, nefesh is the word for soul that's similar to an animal. Animals in nefesh, human is in nefesh, people the words in nefesh, but as soon as you get the ruach, you become a neshama, which is a spiritual soul. So you've got two souls. Inside of you is a Jacob and an Esau. Esau's nefesh, Jacob is neshama. And the neshama actually changed the name of Yaakov, just like the neshama or the ruach changed Abraham's name and Sarah's name. Is that letter Hey, the ruach, that breath that did that work. And with this connotation of the Hey inserted into his name, I can with confidence say that Abraham and Sarah were spirit-filled because of the symbolism that was given to them. And the letter Hey also represents the chest cavity where the lungs are, where you breathe. The breath and ruach. So it's all symbolic. And if you write Yahweh's name, I don't know if you've seen this, you've probably seen this. If you write his name, Yod, Hey, Vav, and Hey, it's an Hey. So that Hey is the chest cavity, that's the ruach.
I want to put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Now, number 90
Nobody else would know.
is connected to Abraham's anointing, where he received the Spirit of Yahweh. 90 has got the number that's connected to three words. The first one is Lamech, that means powerful. Yasak, that means to anoint. Isn't that interesting? And Mahim, that means water. So you need the anointing and the water. You need the Spirit and the Word to be a powerful man of God. So there you see the number 90. Moses became a powerful man of God, receiving the Word, the Torah, and the anointing, the inserted Hey in his life. And that's the pattern, because we're after Father Abraham. He's the origin. He's like the first Adam. He's the original blueprint, and we are replications of him. He's our father. We come from him. He's pattern. And we need to receive the Word, the Spirit, in order to become powerful men and women of God. And that's the symbolism of 90 and the picture of that. Now, the reason that came up is because the other word for discipline is found in Job 5:17, where it says, "Behold, happy is the man whom Elohim corrects. Therefore despise not the discipline of the Almighty." And that's the word Shaddai. And where the word Shaddai is first used in Scripture is where Abram received the anointing at the age of 90. So Yahweh revealed himself to him as Shaddai,
Yeah.
and Abraham received the discipline of Shaddai. Now Shaddai is a female word, so that's a motherly discipline of Yahweh. Because Shaddai also means breasted one,
Yeah, that's
the one who nourishes. And what does Shaddai give us? It gives us, in the scripture regarding to Abraham, it says that Yahweh revealed himself as El Shaddai, instructing Abraham to walk before him and be perfect. So he's talking about the halakha and perfection. So the fatherly discipline deals with wisdom and understanding, the practical doing of it. The motherly discipline has to do with perfection. It also touches on the halakha, but it's more about learning the halakha. It's more about a lesser immature way. The fatherly discipline is more about a mature one, because it sits in the center there with wisdom and understanding, closest to Yahweh. The initial stage of the motherly life is when you're immature, when you need to be perfected, you need to be, looked after, and you need to be taught the halakha. Where the fatherly one is you already walk in the halakha, and then you gain wisdom and understanding. So it's a starting and finishing process. Now, perfect or perfection is the word tamayim. It's this word. You can immediately see we get the word mayim again, which is water. In front of the water, we get the letter taf. The taf means yoke, also means death. It also means the end. And carrying the yoke has to do with what we talked about in the garden. You have to till the ground, you have to put a yoke on, you have to till and break the ground as the ox that pull the yoke with the other ox. You plow the ground so that seed can be sowed, and when you add water, the mayim, the seed will grow. So that's the labor of your toiling, is growth, is life. And that's what that tamayim means, which is perfection. So your works of perfection bear fruit of preparing the ground, and others will come and plant the seed, and then others will come and water. So that's linked to the New Testament connotation there. It's all in the context of working in the garden, yet again. So if they say your faith without works is dead, it means that you're plowing the ground but nobody's sowing any seed. You're plowing the ground, sow the seed, but nobody's watering it. Or you're not even plowing. So that's a problem with the laborers currently that makes them useless and rebellious. They only have part of the three things they have to do, and sometimes they don't even do one of the three. And the end result will be new sprouts, new life, new believers coming in, and then you nurture them, then the El Shaddai, and then the Father love will discipline them and bring them up into maturity. So that's a beautiful picture there, linked from, where did we get this from?
Don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it came from his discipline. That's actually connected to last week's teaching about Yahweh saying no, and this one is about disciplining Moses, basically from not allowing him in, and so we carry on. So I think the fatherly discipline is a bit more severe. The motherly discipline has got a bit more, grace added to it, because you're still stupid, you can't
Because if they fall,
walk, you're
even
still
when
allowed
they
to
go
fall
and not
because
to run, if they fall, we will still kiss them and hug them. Whereas they're old enough to understand.
and they stumble around and fall because they're too lazy to make
I told you,
the
don't
shoelaces. That's stupidity, that's not wise. Yeah. So beautiful pictures there.
So does that fatherly discipline and the motherly one, does that applies to a human mother and father, the way it works together in a family?
So first of all, the mother, nurture and teach. That's why the Proverbs say the Torah of your mother. It's about the basics, which is about what's right and wrong, the rules of the household and all that. And the father will more teach them about
Just describe
outside of the
his
house,
role
wisdom and how to
in,
conduct yourself
in
outside in the world
Yeah,
So
and all the dangers in the world. You need wisdom to survive
and
them.
they've been equipped.
Wow.
which is
Yeah.
amazing.
So one's inside the house, the other one's outside. One is Jacob, the other one's Esau. So it's all just
But it is.
But you
reflecting.
can-
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's a good book,
Okay.
and maybe even to keep it for your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That Dumont, could you just text me the name?
Yes, I did.
Just
It's
oh, you did, right.
I think I text you a video, but from there on you can just find, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
so that you can have them.
The last thing I just want to touch on, it's a short one, is Deuteronomy 7 verse 13, where it says, "And he will love you and bless you and multiply you." Now that word love is basically what kind of love is that? Is there multiple levels of love, or is there one love for all? God so loved the world. Does he have a special love for his people, or is that unconditional love? So what love is it all about? Now the way to understand this in context of the household of Israel and people in the world that he loves is the same way we relate to other people. So I can love my neighbor. Don't have really a relationship with him, but I know his name and I greet him now and then. Then I got my brother and my sister. I love them in a different way. I don't see them that much. Then I love friends. Then I love my children. And ultimately, my love for my wife is the most intimate love there is. So there's levels of love based on types of relationships. So the love that Yahweh has for his people, referring here, he says, in the land of which he swore your fathers to give you, he will bless you in the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your hand, and the grain of your new wine and oil, and the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flock. And later on he basically referred to that they are his children. So he's got that father-child love, which is a greater type of love than having love for the nations, because he doesn't have that, or they don't have that kind of relationship with him. So in that context, yes, Father Yahweh loves his people, his own more.
He loves everyone, but he does
Based on the relationship, he loves them in a different way.
Relationship.
Right.
And it says that in that portion, doesn't it? That he loves more than whatever.
You can even love ice cream and
He
roller
mentions something
skating.
about,
That's a different kind of love altogether.
Chewies.
I love chewies. So I hope he doesn't love me like he loves chewies. Oh, then I'll be in trouble. So how do I gain the ultimate love? So the first level of the love within a household is the father-child relationship. There is a more mature love, which is the bride-groom relationship, which is the most intimate form of love. And that's those two levels. So some people who are believers only aim for that first one. He's my father, I'm a child of the father, that's good enough. But there's other people who aspire to a higher level of love, which is more the intimate love, which is the bride-groom relationship. So that's actually where he wants us to be, because that's completely echad with him, unified with him. It's like the Holy of Holies and the outer court. The outer court is there's a lot of mingle and all that, everybody mingle, but only once that often. But if you're in the family, if you're married with your wife, you see each other every day, and you share your most deep thoughts with that person. And Yahweh had that kind of love with Moses. He had that kind of love with Abraham, because he shared secrets with them that he didn't share with any other. He had that love with David. He shared that intimacy and secret with him in the tabernacle when he sat there and spoke to
In
Yahweh.
fact, the underlying theme with all those individuals is that they reciprocated that by learning about him.
That's right.
It's depending on me what kind of love will reflect, not on him. He's open for the highest one.
He knows us inside out anyway. He's got that, but it's for us to learn about him the same way.
Yeah.
That's
To get
right.
there,
Yeah. And the highest form of love is where you give your all, not where you give or just sit there,
Lay
give
down
me,
your life.
look after me.
Mm.
My bottle of milk is empty. You need to
Yeah.
give me a new
Mm.
bottle of milk.
Gosh.
You need to hold it for me as well so I can drink. That's okay. You can have that relationship with you. That's okay. He still loves you, but you're not the greatest in the kingdom.
Gosh,
Then
you know,
you're
it's funny because
a
you
babe.
think about like the whole Christian theme of the rapture. You know, they want to escape the struggle and the persecution. They want to get out of it before somebody comes to cut the head off. But what we've been watching with FAI, it's basically we're to prepare to walk to the gallows as
Yes.
sheep, as like Yeshua did. You know,
Yes.
silent and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and for the benefit of other people who's coming to faith during that time, because that's where the harvest is.
yeah.
And if there's no laborers, how can the harvest come in? If all the laborers have been raptured,
Yeah.
because the Jordan at that time frame, the tribulation is the harvest.
And you will not believe at the moment how many Facebook videos is going around of people in the church having visions of the rapture.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah.
On
I've
YouTube.
got visions of
Yes.
ice cream.
I had a dream that I had raptured and things at the rapture.
That's
It's
just
what you
coming
want,
out.
is what you see.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they're
Well,
misinterpreting
what
their
you want is
dream.
what the adversary will show you if it's
Yeah.
not in line with what the scriptures say.
I think there's a scripture that says it gives them lying or something like that. They get twisted visions and things.
Doesn't it say in Jeremiah?
In
talks-
Kings.
does it? Oh, go on.
Oh no, so you might
No,
be
no.
different things.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
you go.
No, you say it.
I was going to
I'm
say
not sure
there's a
about the
I don't know
dreams
which-
that come from. It says about dreams and.
in Jeremiah. No, I was going to say about that. I think it's in Kings somewhere where it's the angels or the whoever came before Jehovah and he said to them who is going to go down. And, you know the one I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about. We
to
talk
the
about that a lot.
Yeah, but sending a line, I'll go.
I will
Yeah.
go.
You
How
do
will you do
I'll
it?
become
I'll
a
be.
lying spirit. Yeah.
It's talking about going to a king of an enemy nation or something.
That's in regard to Ahab
Is it?
and Jezebel. Ahab's the
Yeah.
I can't remember
Anyway,
Yeah.
this
what
is
it
a lying
is.
spirit.
But
Yeah.
it's
to get him to
yeah, he's
go into
sending.
battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this,
Yeah.
yeah. There's and also, you know, when it talks about praying with an idol in your heart.
Yes.
So they're looking, they want, you know,
Yeah,
you say
that's
the
what
ice
they
cream
want.
in the sky,
And
Yeah.
they will.
and so, oh, I've seen it, you know.
Yeah, they wanted meat, so he gave them quails.
Mm.
Gave them what they wanted, but it was not for their benefit
No.
at the end of the day.
Until
So even
they
dreams
sell-
and visions
Yeah.
can be the same.
Yeah, and they don't see the Jews as their brothers anyway,
No.
so why would they want to eat
They
them?
just bite them in the neck.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Every time I say bite them in the neck, because when I was about 5, I used to stay at my cousin's sometimes overnight, and I was before school, must have been about 4, and a little girl down the lane that I used to play with near my cousin's, and she was horrible to me, really awful, and I went home crying, and she said, oh come on, I'm really sorry, come here and I'll kiss you. She was about probably 2 years older than me, and
She
so-
bit you?
and she bit my lip really hard.
Oh.
It was every time today.
You
would
remember
say,
that?
I remember that thing. I was, and
I wonder where she is
expecting a
now.
kiss. Expecting a kiss and being.
Rachel and Ivory got us onto this series of videos on. It's called Covenant and Controversy, and it goes into the persecution of the Jews by Christians over the centuries. It's just
So is that where do you
It's on YouTube.
YouTube.
you send me a link?
Yeah, it's in 3 parts, I think. Is it 3 parts? Yeah. So if I send you the first one, then it will.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
something we were aware of already, but this goes into
Depth.
depth, and it's just.
It's kind of talking to Christians that may not be aware that they're anti-Semitic.
FAI Studios, that's
Sure.
But you will send it to me anyway.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. It's well done, and it's maybe good if somebody's open to show
Mm.
where the anti-Jewish
Yes.
sentiment has come
I see.
from.
basically
Yeah.
saying that the church is responsible for the whole.
I believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a document somewhere called The Spirit of Marcion. He was a theologian and he was extremely for replacement theology. Actually, that started with him. That's his
Yeah.
No,
doctrine.
it was
Marcion,
actually
yeah.
Justin Martyr before him.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Marcion. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm.
That's
So
the
I
one.
think what before we end all is maybe just to pray for the people and
Yeah.
cast them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can pray. Okay.
Thank you, Father. Father, I just thank you for another banquet. It's been such a blessing, Philip and Letty come into our midst. And we just thank you so much for that. And Lord, and for the insight into your word that takes us onto a different plane of understanding, reinforces the knowledge and the wisdom that we already have, but also gives us a depth of understanding that we haven't had before. And Lord, we're aware that this coming meeting on Wednesday is really, really important. It's important that we conduct ourselves in the right way. It's important that we establish the right framework for how the meeting will operate. It's important that we are not swayed. We're not swayed. We're not persuaded to move in a direction that is not of you, Lord God.
Mm.
We want to keep the truth before us at all times. We don't want to deny the truth, but nor do we want to do anything that's a stumbling block for people who are on a journey of understanding and may not be where we are, Lord God. We want to do whatever it is that you want us to do in regard to this meeting, and so we ask you to, Lord, touch our hearts, our minds, our emotions, and bring to our understanding what we need to say and what we need to do at that meeting in order to accomplish your perfect plan and purpose for this group. And we thank you for that in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach.
Thank you, Father, for your wisdom and your kind words and your insight that's practical for us today in our current circumstances, that we are perfectly in sync with your word, and your word is alive, and we thank you for imparting your wisdom, imparting understanding, imparting truth. Father, help us to stay humble and be gracious towards our Jewish brothers and our fellow Christian brothers, so we can accommodate them from where they're from, the level they're at, and share what you want us to share with them. Make us sensitive for the audience, make us sensitive for everybody in every meeting, and help us to facilitate you and your spirit and your truth, so you can work through us and speak to your people. I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen.